This show is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Without a healthy mind, being happy is hard. Visit betterhelp.com/kindafunny and see if online therapy is for you.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Kinda Funny Gamescast. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the future class of video games, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
It's me. What's up, Greg?
Not much, man. How you been?
I'm doing pretty good. I just had some garlic bread and 2 slices of asparagus.
I don't like that you made me a liar, because, of course, the roller skating gameplay and Janet Garcia came into the call, and I said, guess what Blessing just went to heat up and eat? She said breakfast burrito. I said close, baked potato. Then Barrett and Janet were like, how is that close? And I left. But you didn't eat the baked potato.
No, I went to the fridge, because these are Outback Steakhouse leftovers. And so I went to the fridge, looked in the box, and I was like, okay, I'm looking at this baked potato. And this baked potato looks really good, and I don't want to rush eating this right before a show. But then I looked at the sides, right? I had the garlic bread and I had the 2 pieces of asparagus, and I was like, these will do. These will get me through the next show. Now, and so, like, that's what I'm running on right now. I'm feeling great.
Is this baked potato one of the 2 baked potatoes that Mike had accidentally ordered?
I love Mike so much because he was at Outback Steakhouse yesterday and he ordered, I heard him, right? Like, he told the waiter, oh yeah, I'll take this, this, and this. And I'll also have 2 sides of mashed potatoes. Actually, no, he was like, the waiter was like, what do you want for a side? And he was like, I'll have the mashed potatoes. And he was like, the waiter was like, you get 2 sides. And that's when Mike was like, double up on the mashed potatoes. Then they came back with 2 baked potatoes, and Kevin turns to Mike and is like, we can fix that. We can return those and get the mashed potatoes that you asked for. And Mike was like, oh no, I'll be good. He wasn't good.
So did you take one of his potatoes?
No, it was one of my own.
Oh, okay.
So then, Janet, how are you? Thank you for joining us for the Deathloop.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excellent. I'm happy to be on a show with you again. Do you have any questions from this? Because I have a burning question, but I wonder if you're on the same level as me.
Well, let's see. My first question is, Blessing said he looked at the baked potato, then he looked at the sides. Is the baked potato not also a side? That was my first question. Second, I think that's my main question right now, but what comes from that?
There are levels to this. All right. So yesterday, the baked potato was a side. All right. It was the side to the ribeye steak that I also got. When I got home today, when I looked at my fridge this morning to figure out what I was going to eat for lunch, it was going to be the baked potato. Baked potato was making the Pokemon evolution from being, oh, you're a side, to now being, no, you're the main course. Okay. Yeah. When I'm sitting at Outback Steakhouse, the steak is the main course. When I'm at home, a loaded baked potato, that is 100% a main course for me.
Here's the question I have, Bless. And granted, I know, of course, you are in shape young gentleman, so maybe it's just you don't eat like the hog I am or whatever. How did you come home with this much leftovers? What went wrong how many awesome blossom bloomin' onions, whatever, did you get before to blow this up? I assume you ate all of the steak, but none of the garlic bread, asparagus.
I got a hefty meal because it was if I'm gonna close my eyes and do my Sean Spencer from Psych deduction memory thing that he does in that show, right? If I'm closing my eyes, looking at my plate, on that plate is a ribeye steak. I also have an order of shrimp. I have like five shrimp on that plate as well. Gotcha. I have the garlic bread. I have like 5 asparagus. And I ate 3 of them. And so I had leftover 2 asparagus. And then is that everything that I missed? I had the baked potato as well.
Baked potato, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that you have the discipline to not only take food with you to go. I mean, did you like maybe get in like an Uber or something where it wasn't that like much of a journey home? Or like got a ride or something?
I'm close enough to the.
Does he have a car?
Okay, you could just.
And I have a car. I drive.
What?
I usually get leftovers. Do you guys usually not get leftovers?
I either don't get the leftovers or I don't eat the leftovers when I get them. Like the leftovers become like you're on the wait list for the garbage. Like when inevitably a few days later you're like, it's not like it went bad, but it's old.
Oh, how long can you trust it, Janet? How long can you trust it?
I'm gonna say like 2 days.
Did I put it into a plastic bag? Did I put it into a plastic bag, or is it still in like the weird container that has all that air in there, and then the food's stale and weird?
Oh, the container air is part of the leftover experience. So like,
once someone introduce me so I can contribute.
Ladies
to this,
and gentlemen, from Tim Tam Thursdays, it's GameSpot's Tamoor Hussain. Hello, Tamoor.
I am here. Blessing, eat all your food the moment you get it. If you are got leftovers,
you're
you're over ordering. And if you are like,
you
very
order on
food...
purpose. You do it on purpose.
I assume this was
meal tomorrow.
This turned into some like company outing yesterday that I won't go to, obviously, because of the baby and Delta and all that stuff. I assume Kind of Funny paid for this. Like somebody threw down the
Funny did
company
pay
card.
for this, yes.
So of course you're getting steaks and you're getting shrimps on top and you're getting onions.
Oh, yeah, you
on
gotta
top.
make your money back.
Okay.
Yeah,
my
you
bad,
could
my
order
bad,
me
my
something.
bad.
I'm not just
Okay.
gonna throw it away.
This is
Listen,
a
listen.
catch me though. If I was paying for it, because here's the thing, I thought I was gonna pay for it. I didn't realize that the job was paying for it. I didn't realize that until I was
Right,
like,
Look at
right.
you.
who are
You
we
got steak
Venmoing?
money? Okay, all right. I see.
Hey, you know, I'm a host on
Outback
PSLW.
I take it
Have
back.
Outback
If you're,
steak.
if
Wait,
you're
are we supposed
looking,
to have steak money? Hold on.
if you're looking to finesse a corporation, then do what you need to. I'm down with that.
Listen, there's a singer-songwriter with a ghostwriter named Drake, Drizzy Drake, right?
Yeah.
They call him
Aubrey
You
Champagne
forgot Drake's
Poppy.
full name, didn't you?
Yeah.
Aubrey.
Drizzy Aubrey Drake Graham. They call him Champagne Poppy, and you know, is that a good nickname? That's
No.
debatable. All I'll say is that, you know, for Drake, him being Champagne Poppy, for Blessing, I am Leftover Poppy. That's what they call me. And by they, I
Not
mean me.
good.
I'm calling myself that right now. I'm Leftover Poppy. I love
That is,
leftovers.
that is not
Leftovers are
flattering.
better than the actual meal sometimes. I'm not afraid to say it.
There's very few items of food that I will take as leftover and then be satisfied with when I eat it the next day. I'm closer to Janet, where I'm like, this is going in a bin, or like I'm taking it home to give to someone who's gonna eat it immediately.
You know what
Have
fixes
you
that
had-
though? You know what fixes that? An air fryer.
Oh
See, but
yeah.
now what am I
knew
cooking
Barry was
again?
about to get bougie.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
knew Barry was
No.
about to get bougie.
The point is not to it's like that. That's why I don't do well, besides the fact that it's usually really expensive, but like the food delivery stuff, we're like, oh, you make the meal, you're no. It's still too much work. Now you've only taken out part of the work. I don't want to do anything. This is the whole point of the leftover.
Have you guys ever had a leftover Chipotle burrito?
No,
Because-
burritos.
No, I've had
you can't.
It is
No.
arguably better.
The bowl I have, like I'll eat some, like when I did Whole30, so like that's why I had to eat the Chipotle, but like I had like half of it, and then I'm like, okay, what's really big? So then I put some of it to the side, and then I ate the rest of it.
I need you to eat half a Chipotle burrito. Then I need you to put it in the fridge for about, let's say, 12 hours, and then come back and microwave it and eat it again. And you will, I guarantee you, it will taste better than how it tasted
If
originally.
you will Venmo me the cost of that burrito, I will do this.
I got you.
Wow.
What's that? $10?
That's it.
I got
yeah,
you.
don't do nothing for free.
He's gonna do it on the Kind of
I
Funny
want
card.
taxes covered.
No, we don't give everybody access to that, Tam. I got to worry about Kevin's purchases.
Hey man, wherever you get it from, that ain't none of my business. I put in the invoice and you just bring it back. That's it. The in between doesn't matter.
Is Janet in our Slack?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
How
Check
do you
her.
not know this?
How-
I talk to Jana like every day. You say
You know when I'm
about-
like, I'm like sending you things for work. That's me there.
You have a lot of people on our Slack. Arguably too many people, so it's hard to keep track of all of them.
Oh
I just
snap! Are
sent
you
a Slack.
Venmoing this now? Okay.
Arguably too many people.
I mean,
That's
I've
Blessing trying
been
to
saying
get
for
some
years,
people fired.
We
Well, I mean,
kick out
Imran's
Nick and
still in
Mike.
there.
Nick and Mike, we kick out. They never respond to Slack anyway.
Oh,
I'm just
Nick,
saying.
yeah, they hate it. They don't even.
Yeah. This is like me when I talk to my brother. He never answers his phone, never texts me back. So I threaten to take his phone, and he's like, "This is the same energy. I'm into it."
Okay. I think
There are
fried
people that are
chicken's pretty
clicking
good.
in. There are people that have clicked into this video for the first time because they want to know our thoughts on Deathloop, by the way.
Welcome to
I
Kind of
sent you my
Funny.
They're
Venmo.
greeted with leftover talk.
Welcome
Alright,
to
thank you for
Kind
your
of
Venmo.
Funny. If you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Each and every week, we gather around this table to talk about all the things we love and sometimes don't love about video games. If you love that, you can go to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames to write in to be part of the show, to get the show ad-free, to get the show with the exclusive post show we do each and every week. And, of course, you could normally be watching us record the show live. Obviously, with a review like Deathloop, there's an embargo, so we couldn't do that today, and we apologize. However, if you have no bucks to toss our way, it's no big deal. You can get each and every episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, roosterteeth.com, and podcast services around the globe each and every week with all sorts of cool takes and reviews and comments. We've been on a tear. Last week, of course, The Artful Escape, Life is Strange, WarioWare. We had a bunch of reviews out there. And of course, we have a bunch of different programming that if you went to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, your one subscription would apply to, like PS I Love You XOXO, the XCast, the Next Gen Podcast, and so much more. Some housekeeping for you. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Tyler Ross, the Kind of Funny Destiny 2 PC Clan, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, Alex J. Sandoval, Techie Haas, James Hastings, Casey, Andrew, Elliot, Brian Ward. Today we're brought to you by HelloFresh, Native, and Chime, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's start with our review of Deathloop. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, Deathloop is coming out September 14th, 2021 from Arkane Studios, maker of games like Dishonored, Dishonored 2, and Prey. Blessing,
Yes.
you and I had the chance to preview this on PS I Love You XOXO not too long ago. So we've already talked a lot about Deathloop, which was our first 5 hours. Look at this. A quesadilla just arrived. All right.
man.
That's my kind of review.
Put it in the
Thank
fridge
you.
and then microwave it.
It's not a, no,
You
it's
did
not
too.
it's a homemade quesadilla. It's not a Chipotle quesadilla.
I'm sure it'll work too.
All right, whatever. Blessing, I feel like we've talked a lot about this. And so, we got to preview it. We've both beaten it. I want to talk to both Janet and Tam, obviously. New ideas, new opinions out here. Janet, when we were previewing it on PS I Love You, you didn't have a copy yet. Now you do. How far are you in Deathloop?
I am 11 hours in, but don't get too excited because I played pretty slowly. I don't know what that 11 hours actually means, but I've spent a significant portion of time with the game, I'd say.
Well, that's the fun thing about Deathloop, right? Is that, yeah, hours don't matter. And arguably, neither do the Visionaries Eliminated. Deathloop, of course, being a loop that you keep playing through. And, you play through this through the course of a day. Every time you go to a new major area, you advance the day. When you get to, going to a new day, the whole day restarts and you relive the whole thing like Groundhog's Day. Not a game of progression so much. It is, but knowledge is your progression. And, of course, there's Residium and ways to upgrade and do all that different stuff. Janet, for where you are 11 hours in, what do you think of it?
Oh, I absolutely adore it. It's fantastic. It is a contender for my game of the year, as much as it pains me to say, because I love Chicory, and that might still be my number one. But I was playing it, and I'm like, my brother was like, oh yeah, like what do you think? I'm like, oh, it's so good. I'm like, I still really like Chicory, and I felt the pull. I felt the pull of Deathloop. It's just so enjoyable. I mean, I think like art direction wise, it's just like a fun world to explore. I think the upgrade system and like the weapon system is compelling enough to keep me thinking about. Yeah, I don't change my loadout that often, but it keeps me thinking about, okay, what am I doing? I'm trying to grind for the Residium. I do feel invested. For those to get context, like the Residium, it's like you collect it and you can use it to sort of say, okay, I'm going to keep this weapon, or maybe I'm going to do upgrades and things. And you can lose it, I think, if you die before the next day or something like that, if you don't spend it. So then I feel really invested in not failing. There's the Juliana element where she comes in and tries to kill you. Then there's that pressure. I had a scene where I spent I want to say half an hour. I had killed a visionary, and when you do the world gets a little more intense. I killed the visionary, but then Juliana showed up, and I'm and then where I killed her, but then where she was a horrible spot to actually collect what she dropped. So I just spent 30 minutes fighting for my life. I am fighting for my life so hard in this game, and that happens somewhat constantly, and I love it. I'm hooked on it. I want to platinum it. The platinum looks kind of hard, so maybe not, but I'm obsessed with it.
I definitely have some things to say about the trophies, but before then, Tamoor Hussain from GameSpot.com. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're reviewing this for GameSpot.com.
Yes, I have reviewed it. So by the time you're watching this, you'll be able to go to GameSpot.com and read a cool 3,000 words about this game, because I had a lot to say. And I spent a lot of hours trying to say it nicely and in a way that's engaging to read. So yeah.
Well, nobody wants to read Print is Dead. Tell me right now in the audio-visual format, what did you think of Deathloop?
It's my game of the year. I think it's incredible. I gave it a 10 out of 10, which is a coveted award.
That's news to us. We didn't know that, ladies and gentlemen. That's awesome.
Holy cow.
I obviously in the GameSpot history, there's only a few games that have got that. Ironically, I think I've given them, might be approaching giving the most 10 out of 10s, which says a lot about the games I picked to review. But yeah, I think it's an incredibly, I think I use the word elegantly designed game. And also the thing about it I love, and I talk about this in my review, is it's a very introspective game. It's a game that Arkane kind of looks at how they make games, what makes their games interesting, and deconstructs it and places those pieces into this experience on a almost isolated way, where you're engaging with pieces of the overall gameplay experience one at a time. But in the course of doing that, you very slowly start to connect the dots. That's what this game is about. It's about connecting the dots until you understand how it all comes together. And the fascinating thing about it is the thing that it ends up being is a classic Arkane game. So by the time you finish playing this game, not only have you learned how to play this game, you've learned what makes an Arkane game amazing. So like by the time you finish this, like you are now ready to play Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2, which are two of my favorite stealth games of all time. And I think that the level of kind of self assessment and insight that has gone into this, and then refinement and design kind of like acumen they put into creating this experience it is genuinely special. Like it is fascinating. It's a game that I spent my time not only playing but thinking about how they designed it and how they're making one thing lead to another, the breadcrumb trail, how to make certain things satisfying. And there's a lot of quotes of Dinga Bakaba, who's one of the kind of main people working on this game, talking about the easy pulls to, oh, this is like Outer Wilds, or it's a time loop game, so it's kind of like Hades or like this. And he's always maintained that no, there's time for that conversation later, but when you play this game, come at it as its own thing, and hopefully you'll see that this is completely different. And I understand that why he was saying that. I was one of those people who are like, yeah, it's a time loop game, it's kind of like a roguelike, but I get what makes it different now. And it is ironically them doing the thing that they do best, which just happens to elevate the formula that other people are used to another level for me.
Yeah. Now that I'm on the other side of it, obviously we previewed it at 5 hours. Now credits have rolled or whatever. Like, I still stand by how special Deathloop is and how incredible Deathloop is. I have criticisms of where it goes and how it comes together. But for me, looking back on it and playing last night, because, I beaten it last week sometime, and I want to get my feet wet again and, refresh my memory on some stuff. And running through it, Tam, this is a reference that is very personal, but I also think it's one you'd probably get. What Deathloop is, right, is this murder toy box, this murder sandbox. It is always this idea of go through, kill these visionaries, that's your objective. But there's also side quests of kill these things or find this thing or get into the thing. But overall, when I originally started playing it, I was having the whole like, oh yeah, this is funny. It's like Groundhog Day, obviously. I'm starting the thing, I hear the same conversation. That's cute, that's funny, whatever. But last night playing it, what Deathloop will always, from here on out, remind me of is the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo disc that came with Zone of the Enders. Because I know you're as big a Metal Gear fan as I am, if not bigger, Tam. Exactly. And when we had that disc, what it was is I'd come home every day from high school, throw my books on the floor, not do any of the homework, sit down and play that thing over and over and over again. And what I was doing, obviously, after, seeing how fast I could get through it, if I could get through it with a no kill, it just became experimentation. And okay, I know that around this corner, this enemy's going to come. So if I wait here, what about that? Playing Deathloop now, running through these areas and like, as Barrett's showing B-roll here right now, what is this, midday or morning on this one area? Like that, it means that every time you come here at this time of day, this is what it's going to look like, right? So knowing where someone's going to be, knowing the conversation, knowing when they will finish their line and then walk away, so that things that were incredibly hard that first time around of sneaking by and stealthily getting by now becomes so second nature. And it is that thing of, again, progression is hard to say, oh, I've played 11 hours. You could be in a million different places with that. But what it does talk about is the way your skill set has progressed, the way your knowledge of the game has progressed, the way your acumen for playing it your way has progressed. Because that's the other thing, is there's so many different upgrades and character augments and weapon trinkets to put on these guns. But inevitably for me, I was always perfecting my own stealth loadout. That's what I was doing, right? Like by the end of this game, I'm still playing it the way I pretty much was playing at the beginning, except I'm way better and I'm way more powerful. And that makes it such an enjoyable sandbox / toy box to play in. Blessing, are you having a similar experience?
Yeah, I'm right there with both of you. I love that Metal Gear Solid 2 was the reference that you made, because for me, as I played this game, I kept thinking of Metal Gear Solid 5 in the way that game, for me, Metal Gear Solid 5 is the best stealth game ever made. And the reason why I put it on that pedestal is because the game gives you so much choice in terms of, all right, cool, do you want to go in during the day or during the night? All right, do you want to go in with a sniper? Do you want to go lethal? Do you want to go non-lethal? All right, do you want to Fulton enemies or do you want to take them out? And as you play, the game is going to react to you. Deathloop does so much in terms of giving the player choice and in terms of allowing you to play the way you play. And for a stealth game and for Arkane, I think that has been such a good benefit. I love how Tam put it in terms of them being self-referential and looking back in themselves and figuring out what works for us. And that is very much the similar takeaway I took away as well, which is this is the most Arkane game that Arkane has made. You know, playing Dishonored 1 and 2, both those games, I enjoy, and I really love those games for the stealth elements, and I love them for the level design, and I love them for so many other elements. But I'd say Deathloop takes what works about Dishonored and sits with it and goes, all right, how do we make these mechanics shine the best we can make them shine? And so, like, cool, you have stealth, you have abilities like shift, you have things like the double jump, you have these different weapons. How do we create levels that allow you to go in and actually learn the levels and actually have those repetitive missions where, you know, like repetitive is going to be a fun word to use with Deathloop because the game is literally about repetition. But there are times where you're going after the same visionaries over and over to try and get their slab or upgrade your slab, because many of the visionaries in this game have slabs where if you take them out, you get an upgrade. And so if you want shift, you have to find the visionary who has the
Blessing,
shift
what is
slab.
a slab?
A slab is basically, what's the word for Dishonored has a very similar thing. They're basically your powers, right?
Superpowers, right? Yeah.
They're superpowers. And so like in Dishonored, you had the ability to like teleport a certain distance away. Deathloop has the exact same thing, and Barrett's showing it on screen of Colt finding the shift slab, right? Where if you find it, you can do the teleport ability. And there's a number of them in the game, and they're all held by the different visionaries that exist in the game. Once you find them, you get those abilities, but then if you want to upgrade those abilities, you have to go back and find the visionaries that originally had them. And once you take them out again and collect the slab again, that then gives you an upgrade for your shift slab. And so your shift slab might take you further, or you might be able to pause it in midair, or you might get any sort of other upgrade for it.
And even before that, right, just to chime in to tag as we start actually talking about mechanics, right? This is what Janet was talking about with the Residium, right? Yeah, you get the shift slab, and so now you have the shift slab either until you die or your day restarts. If you take the Residium, which is this currency you're finding in the like time juice you're finding throughout the levels, right? You can then invest that in between your days to keep that with you forever. So you're using Residium to keep weapons, to keep slabs, to keep upgrades for slabs for your character that will be persistent then with you. Otherwise, you would restart on the beach every day with the same gun and nothing else. But the Residium allows you to basically infuse things to stay with you. Sorry, Blessing.
Exactly. But then that's the thing I love the most about the game is the fact that, you know, I rocked with the shift slab and one other slab, the one that allows you to tether enemies together so you can take them out all in one go.
Nexus, I think.
The Nexus, those were my two go-to. You know, I rarely ventured out because I had found something that had worked for me. I also had a certain arsenal of weapons that I loved to make my go-tos, and I had certain upgrades that I had discovered throughout my time playing that kept being my go-tos. And you know, I love the fact that this game allows you to create your own way of playing, and you know, you have the ability to curate the gameplay loop that works for you, and the game gives you as many choices as possible to really make that gameplay feel meaningful. And so like you get in and, you know, like one of the things I led with talking about this game in the preview is saying that, you know, Deathloop is maybe one of the most original AAA games I've played in years. And that comes from the fact that the structure of it is so different and so interesting and so unique to pushing player choice as much as possible. And so in the way that the time loop thing works, right? Like, you can choose, all right, in this loop, I'm going to go after this visionary, or in this loop, I'm going to go after this lead and do this number of tasks so that I can set this thing up. And the game at any point never feels linear in a way that you're being asked to do any specific thing at any specific time. You can tackle this game any way you want to and always feel valid. And it feels very different, original, and feels very free because of that.
Yeah, one of the things I want to double down and then go around the table to talk about loadouts, right? You're talking about shift slabs, and it's funny as you start mentioning slabs in general, you're talking about your shift slab. The fact that I never used that was never mine, right? And it was because from the beginning they explained the visionaries, and the visionaries have it all laid out. And I mentioned this in the preview, the way, and we'll talk about it here, the way that for a game that is this complex and has this much stuff going on, the way they've made it where I never felt like I needed to write down a note. I never was like, wait, what am I doing? Like their mission structure, like the tree they use both for the visionaries and then just for your arsenal. So there's the visionaries you need to kill. There's the arsenal that can make you more strong if you go. You can follow these mission chains. You know exactly what to do, when to do it. If you do all this different stuff, it doesn't matter, right? But from the onset, I had looked out and there was like the aether slab, right? Which grants you invisibility. And I was like, I am going to stealth the fuck out of this game. I want that. So I went and got that, right? And it was, this uphill fight to do it, like I was talking about earlier. And then once I had it, to upgrade the slab, right, to make it better, to max it all the way out, you have to keep going and getting it. You have to keep going and fighting the guy who had it originally, and then you get the upgrade off of him to put it in. And so it was so crazy to be doing that and then take time off and then come back and do a little bit more and bounce around. But to come back and own that area in the way that the first time I remember it all going wrong. Of when I didn't have the invisibility and I snuck in, these people saw me and I'm like, oh my God, I got a shot and I barely survived. But then from the end to be like, all right, cool. Take over that camera, take over that turret, do this thing, go that way, blah, blah, blah. And I'm on the guy before he even knows. Like, that's the power of this thing going through. But as we go around, Janet, what are you using right now? What are your slabs? What are your weapons?
I think you already know. It is that same slab. We're playing this game exactly the same way.
Oh, yeah.
I also, so far I have only like 3 slabs right now. I have that invisibility one, the shift one, and then the Nexus one where you can connect enemies. And I'm like, maybe I should try to branch out. And I remember using shift and I'm like, I just don't feel like this is going to be for me. I shifted once to kill somebody and then I shifted again into the freezing water that kills you instantly. And I was like, this was a fun experiment. We gave it a try. We tried to be different. It's not for me. Yeah, that's the one I'm using too. And I love it as like, it is the perfect tool for my brand of what I call jank stealth, which is I'm stealthy until I get caught. And then I just start shooting people with a shotgun. And it's great because like, I'm someone that, I play games where you shoot all the time because that's a very common mechanic, but I'm not like a shooter person. And I think I struggle with like aiming and like the pressure. And then also you have, decent health and there's a lot of like health available around, but if you're just standing out in the open in a firefight, it doesn't take that many shots to kill you. But since I have the invisibility and I've been focusing on trying to like really lean into other side upgrades that like maybe make my power regenerate earlier, which is what you use to use your powers, like that meter. So I've just been like, okay, I'm gonna be invisible for my stealth, and then if I get caught, oh, I'm invisible again. You can't even see me. Boom, I killed somebody. I hit here. It regens. I've been cheesing the hell out of this game and loving every second of it, just being like, okay, they're not going to open this door. I'm just going to wait here. And then when you open the door, I'm just going to shoot. And I'm going to wait. I'm going to be invisible. I'm going to shoot. I've just been like cheesing the hell out of it. And I've really enjoyed that. I mean, to tie back to what Blessing was saying about like player choice and autonomy, I think a lot of games pitch themselves as you can go in stealthy or you can go in loud. And even though that is still like the mechanical binary of this game, there's so much variety and play within that it feels like just a lot more genuine and enticing. Like I don't feel like I'm funneled between 2 choices because I'm constructing the nuance within those options, and I can kind of take both parts but give them like, an invisibility twist, or give them like an aggressive twist, or give them like, a kinesis type twist, like whatever I'm looking to do. And I've really, really enjoyed playing that way, and it's been exciting and fun and it like powerful and just surprising just all throughout. I've really been loving it.
The funny thing, yeah, like the funny thing for me is hearing you guys say that you didn't really use shift, because I was so reliant on it. Legitimately, halfway through this game, I was like, I wonder if anybody's not going to use shift. So hearing you guys not use it blows my mind a little bit.
No,
but
you can't even see me. How can you shoot me? You can't see me. It's
see, that's funny
impossible.
because that's ether, right? The one that lets you go
Yeah,
invisible.
and I got the
Use
upgrade.
that-
I got the upgrade now too. That when I snap the guy's neck, and if I'm invisible, their body turns invisible, so no one even sees the body. Nobody has to know they were there.
Ooh,
That's
I
awesome.
want that.
Yeah, I used that once, and I was like, oh, this isn't for me. This doesn't seem like it works that well. And so like hearing that you guys swear by it, I think makes that awesome, right? The
Couple of
fact that
cowards here. Couple of
you
cowards.
really are able to like, make that your own and make it work. And I love what Janet just mentioned about finding the nuances of gameplay within doing stealth or within even going loud. Because for me, there was a shift in the way that I played about halfway through where
Shift.
there was oh wow, that's good. Yeah, there was a shift. I came to a nexus point. The first half of the time playing this game, I was doing stealth a lot. I like stealth games. I played stealth in Dishonored because in Dishonored 1 especially, those games would punish you if you didn't go stealthy. If you try to kill everybody, those games were pretty aggressive about it. Deathloop is not that at all. At a certain point, I was like, you know what, fuck it. I have Nexus, so I can connect people and kill a bunch of people at the same time. I have Shift, so I can get around real quick. I have an ability to double jump, and I have heavy weapons, right? I got a shotgun. Why don't I just become a wrecking ball? And that ended up being my playstyle toward the latter half of the game, where I was still quiet. I was still pretty smart and tactical and strategic about how I approached enemies, because you're not necessarily like Agent 47 and Hitman with health, where if you're loud, you will get killed in Hitman. In this game, it's like an in between something like Hitman and something that's a little bit more actiony, but you still have to be careful about how much you're out in the open. But then also, if you get killed, you have the slab that what's his name, Colt already has, which is reprised, and so you can come back twice, and so the game is very forgiving about that too.
Yeah, it wants you to experiment and not feel like you're being punished.
Exactly. And in the way that I started going loud, like that felt like a really fun way to play, like going in, kind of scoping out the area and going, cool, let me connect these guys real quick and just take them out like that and really feel like a wrecking ball and feel like a force that is, like I'm not trapped in here with them, they're trapped in here with me kind of thing. And the fact that like the game allows you to do that is super awesome to me.
And and that if you have to go loud, go stealth, and then what you're talking about, I want to talk about that. But before then, Tam, what is your loadout? How have you been playing this game?
So I do this thing where whenever I play stealth games, I like to test the boundaries. Like it always comes back from when you start playing Metal Gear Solid 1, everyone has a cone of vision, so you know exactly like how far they can see, where they're going to move. And whenever I pick up a stealth game, that's the first thing I want to figure out. How far can these enemies see? How smart are they? And then with that knowledge, you can kind of figure out what you can do as a player. And I spent a lot of time using every single one of the powers. Wow. My go-to is currently Shift and Aether together because I think they're two most versatile in my playstyle. My favorite thing to do at the start, like with Shift now, I can usually complete, like I can kill most of the visionaries in like a minute or two, just with the speed that I'm able to move around. But my favorite thing to do in that game was like use the specific, all the enemies, the Eternalists, they're called, their like vision length to manipulate their movement. So you can like appear just outside of their vision cone or in it. So they see you, and then they move away from an area you need to sneak into, and then you can shift up onto a rooftop around into the area while they're looking, investigating. You can like appear using Ether to just show yourself for a second, and they're like, I'm going to go investigate that. And while they're doing that, you can do any manner of thing. But I think the way that I approached it was, what is my goal for that run? And I did a lot of runs where I was just gathering Aether. The thing that I think is really genius about this is the trinkets that we talked about, like that can be used to enhance your playstyle. But they drop a lot. You can find a lot of trinkets in this game. So I often had runs where I was like, this is going to be a trinket and residuum run, where I'm just going to go in, I'm going to kill as many people as I can, gather residuum, pick up some trinkets, take out the visionary, and when I'm done with the day, I'll have a whole bunch of resources that I can figure out what I want to do with. Yep. And with that kind of approach, I would use Havoc and Nexus, because that meant I could power up, tie loads of people together, and kill them very, very quickly. But then when I'm doing like an actual, like I need to figure out what's going on here, where is this visionary going to be, what are my entry points, I would stick to using Shift and Aether, because that allowed me to get up onto rooftops or get into the ground level and sneak around without being seen. So I experimented with pretty much everything, just depending on what I wanted to do in that run.
And I think you touch on so many great things there, right? Of talking about trinkets. And if you haven't played yet, I know we're throwing out words here, but they're upgrades, right? But they're for your weapons, and then also for you, right? And I think they might be called something different for the diamond you assign yourself, but it's the same idea of upgrades, right? So as you kill people, they drop these things, you get them in between your different sections of the day, or before you reset the day, you get to spend that residuum if you want to keep them on your staff. But once you do it, you start to build out this library like Tam's talking about, to where it is this idea that, okay, cool, I am going to go loud on this next one. I am going to go stealth. I am going to, like, the one I've been running with right now, or at least what's on my screen right over here that is where I left off, right, is, of course, the Aether one, because I love being invisible, like we've talked about. But then the other one is a Nexus, right, which is the one we've talked about a few times, which links everybody up so that if you kill one person, the other people who are linked, they get killed the exact same way. And one of the things I adore about this game and think is so cool about this game is that the visionaries you need to take out to advance the plot and do all these different things and get their slabs and stuff, they aren't superhuman. They aren't bosses in a way they have this giant health bar, right? They are playing by the same rules of you in the world. So you can link them up and then take out just a normal Joe Blow guy on the street, faceless dude. And so I'm built this way from basically the final mission, where I needed to eliminate a couple of them at the same time. And what I'd done is I finally got them all on the rooftop. I linked them all up, and there was a guy that I just jumped off the roof and flattened him, who was a normal guy, but it also took out the visionaries and let me go that way. And so one of the things Janet mentioned earlier about the platinum trophy, of course, if you're not from around here, the trophies that come with the game on a PlayStation, your achievements, right? I think I want to give a shout out as somebody who loves trophies so much to Arkane and this trophy design, because I think you can play this game and finish it and roll credits and be done with it. But then it is this idea of, if you want to do more, what would you do more with it? And again, it's back to me with that Metal Gear demo disc, because the trophies are, all right, cool. Start the game and have nothing equipped and go through and beat one of the visionaries and get out and never be seen. Or go in with this, that, and the other and do this. It's doing what I always think trophies and achievements should do, which is tempt you or ask you to play the game in a different way. And so it is these very specific challenges they're using the trophies to do of, all right, cool, get in there and get out and do this, that, and the other the exact same way. And I'm like, wow, what an interesting way to then incentivize me, somebody who didn't use all the different slabs and didn't use a lot of different trinkets, right? There's a trophy in there, and I'm speaking out my ass a bit on it. It was like, use 34 or 37 different trinkets or different kinds of permutations of a loadout. And I can't imagine I'm anywhere close to that, because on top of the fact that we were talking about earlier of trinkets dropping a lot, the weapons and the trinkets drop and they have rarities. So it was early on that I was getting, a bunch of grays or, then some light blues, but now I'm getting the purples, I'm getting the orange epics. And so it is this idea that as you get a more rare version of a weapon, a more rare version of a trinket, you get more out of that in terms of, if it was going to give you faster health regen, it's going to even more. And like, if it was moderate one time, it might be super intense on the other one. There's so much replayability in this game that is actually outrageous.
Yeah, for sure. It is like we didn't even talk about Carnesis, which is such a fun slab as well. And you can do really ridiculous things like launch objects around, or even just start treating enemies like ragdoll. And the opportunities for creativity in the way you play is really, really open. Like, I'm excited to see what well-known stealth players like Stealth Gamer BR or anyone else around on YouTube that love to create these really quick runs are able to do with it. And you can set up these weirdly intricate Rube Goldberg kill machines if you wanted to. I started doing that, but then I was like, I need to review this game, so I got to stop messing around.
And that's some of the trophies, right? Where it's asking you to kill people in a very specific way, and it is like, oh, I never even thought that is something I can do. Once you really get off your path, your track, you realize what this game can actually do.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it does have the trophy card integration, which works pretty well from what I use. Like a lot of not a lot of games are using it, but you can pull up your home menu and then select the trophy card, and it will take you to the area that you need to be.
And they'll give hints too, which I know so many people have been concerned about. People did write in, right, asking how does this go. So Colin Kerford is like, I'm curious about how progression works when you have 8 simultaneous targets. If you manage to take one out, does that feel significant, or do you just have to remember that for when you're finally figured out how to take down the other 7? That's what I was talking about earlier when I referenced I never had to make a note. When the game got pitched, when we were seeing all the stuff, I was thinking oh my God, I'm gonna have to keep notes to remember how it did Visionary 3 when I come back from doing 7, 8, and 9. And it is not that way at all. The game does such a great job of visually laying out the information for you at a glance to know what to do before you go into any new area. Because it is, again, and this is something I actually want to talk about maybe as a con later on for the story part of it, but the game is unabashedly a game. And that means that in between the segments you're in the map, you're doing all the killing you see right here from Barrett, right? But then you finish your objective, you run back to the tunnel, you go in there. It's like, cool, you sure? You're done. Here's your results screen. Here's your loadouts. Here's your different things. And you're prepping a loadout to then choose what area to go to do whatever next mission you need to do. It is constant. It's not breadcrumbing you to death where you're going through it brain dead. You get on to I want to upgrade this slab, so I'm going to go do that. Or you go to the arsenal and man, that gun they're talking about sounds cool. I want to go get that gun. The game does a great job of breadcrumbing you and making the progression feel good. And then when it finally gets to the big ask, which is, kill everybody in one run, it does that in the exact same format of cool, here's how you need to have this to be digestible. And if you want to go off the beaten path and do some stuff, you can. But Janet, I'm not wrong, right? You haven't felt overwhelmed in your 11 hours?
No, it's been pretty handholdy, which I could see some people maybe seeing as a con. I personally didn't, but it is very much your menu is a list of objectives. And it's not so much as, I'm the same way where I've heard about this game and I'm there seems like there's a lot going on. And, people describing things like runs, I'm like, unappealing. Like, I'm not interested in doing I want to just, I'm getting in, I'm doing the thing, I'm getting out. You know, it's fun time, not a long time. But with this, like, it's so good at, as you explore, and even something as simple, like, which I just appreciate the hell out of this, is someone that, you know, I love reading, but the thing is, in games, I love reading, but I don't love it when it's not like a story specific game. Even if the game has a good story, I'm like, look, if this was like Life is Strange or something, I'm reading all the notes, I'm playing the guitar. Here, I'm like, I ain't trying to read this diary page. I ain't trying to read this email. Like, it's too long. I'm good. But what's great is you open it up, and if there's relevant information, there'll kind of be like a pop-up on your screen that says like, you learned this thing. So you don't actually have to like really fully engage that much. It doesn't like detract from your playtime, which is really nice. But if you're someone that's like, no, I want like all the lore, well, you could read it also. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, now it's not worth reading necessarily. The closest to getting lost in any section that I got was like, one of them was asking me to find, I'm trying not to spoil anything. So like, one of them was asking me to find something, like find 4 of these things, but I didn't know what they were describing because I just like wasn't familiar with the term. And then when I figured it out, it was fine. But like, what's nice is those few times where I was kind of confused, or like there was sort of this puzzle where, you know, something might explode and you need to be aware of what's going on. Like, I looked in the environment, I did have to kind of find that more. Like, it wasn't as given to me as everything else, which was a bit surprising. But for the most part, like, I personally didn't perceive this game as like, I'm going for a run, I'm going to upgrade. I just focused personally on the objective. And sometimes when you're pursuing a certain objective, maybe you will kill a visionary a second time and then get an upgrade. Like, I have never intentionally pursued upgrades. I've never intentionally pursued Residium to upgrade. I've just been playing focused on the main objectives, selecting into my objectives. And along the way, you know, when you're doing what you need to do, you will get Residium, or you might stumble across an upgrade. So what's nice is I don't feel like I need to constantly be thinking about my runs or my loadout or min-maxing the thing. Like, I can just focus on the main objective. And through that, I still get the joy of having attempts and failing and being strategic and still thinking about my loadout, but not in a way that's so like rogue style, because, you know, as Blessing said during the preview, like, it's not a rogue-like game. It just has a loop. And even the loop isn't that intensive. It's very like, you can choose, and, you know, when you go to the tunnel and you're selecting your menu stuff, you can pick what time of day it is. You know, when you're ending a day. Even when you die, you like come back like 2 more times. So you really have to die 3 times to fully fail. Like, all of those things help make it feel more, despite being a very like fresh and unique take, feel a little bit more traditional than like, when I think time loop, I think, oh my God, the stress of Majora's Mask and the moon coming down. Like, it doesn't have that. It's very like, you're playing and the loop is part of the mechanical construct and the narrative construct, but it's not constantly looking over your shoulder. Like, you're not like thinking about time all the time. Like, once you select your time of day and you go, that's it. You're not like it's not constantly in your like playthrough of it.
It was rare where I feel like the loop got to be in my way at all, where I'm with you. The amount of times I would clear the entire map of everybody, and then because even if you're picking up people's trinkets, and even if you have no intent to ever use them, at the, you know, in between screen, you can recycle them and get Residium from them. So it was about like, oh man, I got this new slab and I want to make sure, I want to overcompensate to make sure I have enough Residium for that and the one trinket I do like. Let's clear it out and do that and get through it that way. And then the couple times I did die and lose everything, it was more like, I knew I was pushing it, and that isn't good. And like, you know, it's been talked about a bit here and there, but there's a multiplayer component to this game, right? Where Juliana, who is your antagonist, you've seen in all the many trailers, right? Like, that can be an AI person if you're playing single player offline, but if you're playing online, other players can invade your game and come after you as her. So like, I had a similar thing. I think we were talking about before, Janet, it might've been off air, I forget, but like, where I was like, I had been struggling with this mission. I finally had it beat. I just need to evacuate. And as I'm going to evacuate, it's like, poof, Juliana's on the hunt. I'm like, oh, God damn it.
It's the most heartbreaking thing, but also just adds a level of, I guess, suspense to the game, where I had the exact same thing happen, where I went to do a mission, and on the way to completing that lead, I was like, oh, okay, cool. There's also a visionary here. I'm gonna stop by this visionary, kill him real quick, collect their slab, and then get all the resources from that and bring it back. And so I was in like a heavy session of a day, or at least a portion of that day. And on my way back to peace out and make my way back to the loadout screen and escape the district, you know, I got that Juliana thing, and I was like, fuck. all right, like I wasn't prepared for this. I have a show that I want to do for Kind of Funny right after this, and like, time's running out, but I guess I have to take out Juliana. And sure enough, I had the decision of, all right, do I want to play it safe? Do I want to play this the way I have been playing this? Or am I gonna get risky and go loud and go more wild? And in that moment, I was like, I gotta save time. I gotta go wild. And I got murked by Juliana and lost all that progress. But it's that give and take. Like, I think the thing that's nice about this game, when we're talking about progression and we're talking about the loop of it, compared to like any other time loop game that's even come out this year, I would say this game does a really good job of making sure that you have some sort of progress that you're making from loop to loop. It's not a roguelite, right? Like Returnal is one of my games of the year, and in that game, there were so many runs that I had nothing to show for, right? Like the only thing you're really collecting between runs and Returnal is like ether, and that's like whatever. And so like in this game, even comparing it to something like the Forgotten City, the Forgotten City, there were times in that game where I would finish a loop, and like the whole point of that loop would be to do one thing and then start the next loop over just to test things out. In Deathloop, the game is so handholdy in a way that I'm with Janet, that I think that can go either way depending on who you are. I think most people are going to appreciate how handholdy it is, because if it wasn't as handholdy as it is, it would be, I think, too much to manage unless you're you're the hardest of the hardcore and you are busting out the notepad and you are, you're making your own sticky notes.
You become Colt. You just have like that board.
Yeah, like you have to become a mad
messages,
person, essentially, if you want to keep track of the things that the game is keeping track for you. And so I like the fact that it's there. But where I guess the loop stuff starts to matter, right? Like if your response to that is like, okay, then what does it matter? The fact that it's a time loop. Where it starts to matter is the fact that you can then make choices of how you're going to check off those lists, right? It's a thing of, okay, cool, I know that in this district at this time of the day I have this lead here. What if I can knock out 2 leads and a visionary, right? Like, what if I can do X, Y, and Z thing here and then collect this gun that was teased to me? What if I can do X, Y, and Z thing here in this district during the nighttime and knock out multiple
This is why
things?
it's taking me so long. I'm not doing it. I'm like, look, you gave me the map and the menu. You said go to, and again, not to give specifics, but like it's a lot like if we use like a real life example of like my family in my apartment, if I'm trying to kill everyone in my apartment, it's like, okay. It's like this. It's like, okay, so it's like
they're on the other side of the door listening in, like, what is she talking about?
They'll be fine. It's like, okay, well, I know Maggie goes to the gym at 5 a.m. on this time of day, so that means I got to go to the gym to see like what this information. So that's kind of how it works. And I guess it's funny hearing you describe it that way, because I'm like, yeah, that probably would be faster, and that's why I'm like, I'm 11 hours in, but I don't think I'm like close to rolling credits, because I'm like, look, we're going as long as possible. Well, you gave me one thing to do here. I did it, and now I go back into my tunnel, and then I come back out. And
for the folks who have finished it, how many hours did it take? Because for me, it took me about 17-ish hours to complete the game, and I felt like toward the end I was taking too long. Like the game started dragging the last third for me in a way where I had gotten all the guns that I needed. I had gotten all the slabs that I needed. I think I had upgraded multiple slabs all the way, or at least collected all of their upgrades, I should say. And I was like, everything I have is purple, right? And I am 2/3 through the game, and I felt like I had already ran out of steam in terms of all the extra stuff I'm collecting. And at this point, I'm just knocking out all the main stuff that I have left. Were you guys able to complete it faster or longer? Or how was it for you, Tam?
Wait, hold on, Tam, because that's a great question. Time matters to everybody. And you know what always eats up my time that I hate? It's ads. You know what I'm talking about? You got words. So that's why I always tell people go to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, where, of course, you can write in to be part of the show. You could get the show usually live as we record it. You get the post show. You get all these benefits for PS I Love You, XOXO, and, of course, the Kind of Funny Xcast. But most importantly for right now, that's where you'd go to get the show ad-free. But speaking of ads, Greg Way, here's a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Native. It's pop quiz time. What's the difference between deodorant and antiperspirant? Antiperspirants have aluminum in them, and that plugs your sweat glands to stop the sweat. That is bad and gross. Nuh-uh. Native deodorant is made without aluminum, parabens, or even sulfates. Nope. It's got ingredients you've heard of, like coconut oil and shea butter. Who doesn't love shea butter? Native deodorants keep you smelling and feeling fresh all day with scents like coconut vanilla, which is their most popular, and eucalyptus mint, which is one I'm a big fan of. G's been using that, and she smells really, really good. And they even have unscented and baking soda free if you have sensitivities. You are going to love Native as much as Gia has been loving it, and because she's been loving it, I have been loving it as well. Right now, you can save 20% on your first purchase. Go to nativedeo.com nativedo.com/kfgames or use promo code kfgames at checkout. That's nativedo.com/kfgames or use promo code kfgames at checkout for 20% off your first purchase. nativedeo.com/kfgames. Next up, shout out to Chime. We've all spent money on dumb things at some point in our lives, some of us more than others. I'm not pointing any fingers, but one thing I hope I never have to give money to again is hidden fees in checking accounts. It's ridiculous. That's why the award-winning app and credit card Chime has no overdraft fees, foreign transaction fees, monthly fees, or transfer fees. That's a lot of fees that this doesn't have. Plus, Chime lets you send money to anyone, even if they're not on Chime. That's always a great feature to have. There's no fee for you and no cash out fees for them either. Best of both worlds. It's time to say goodbye to hidden fees. Join the millions of Americans already loving Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. You can get started today at chime.com/kfgames. That's chime.com/kfgames. chime.com/kfgames. Banking services provided by and debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees apply except at MoneyPass ATM in a 7-Eleven location and at any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. Other fees such as third-party and cash deposit fees may apply. And finally, shout out to HelloFresh. It's fall, y'all, and that means things have gotten extra busy. Ain't it the truth? You don't have time for the grocery store, do you? I don't. Forget that nonsense and rely on HelloFresh. They send fresh, pre-measured ingredients and absolutely mouth-watering recipes right to you. You can skip the tedious parts and get right to the fun. Plus, they offer a lot of variety with 50 menu and market items every week, with everything from vegetarian meals for people like Paula Coelho to calorie-smart options for people hopefully like me, to extra fancy gourmet options for the one and only Kevin Coelho. HelloFresh has been awesome. So many people I know love it, including Joey Noel, Blessing Adeoye, Cool Greg, and hey, if Cool Greg says yes, why aren't you saying yes to HelloFresh? Go to HelloFresh.com/KFGames14 and use code KFGames14 for up to 14 free meals, including free shipping. That's up to 14 free meals free plus free shipping at HelloFresh.com/KFGames14. Use promo code KFGames14. HelloFresh.com, KFGames14.
Tam, how long did it take you to play through this?
First of all, Blessing, I just want to appreciate the ASAP Rocky reference. You said everything's purple. I like it.
yeah, of course.
It took me, I think it took me 11 hours to complete it, or 11 or 12 hours to complete it. And then I carried on playing a bunch more. But yeah, it is, I spent a lot of time like dawdling around and figuring. I'm one of those weird people who like will sit on a perch and then watch all the enemies walk around to be like, I'm gonna figure out what your exact walk pattern is and what can throw you off of it. So I did spend a lot of time doing that, but it still came to about 11 or 12 hours to complete it. I think what you're saying about the kind of handholdy part of it is really interesting. I think it's handholdy in the areas that it matters the most. And those areas happen to be the main quest because they're what people want to know to keep them on track. I think that there is, for people who might be listening to that and being like, oh, I can't believe it's handholdy. I want it to be more like, experiment and that kind of stuff. It definitely has that. And they manifest through things called leads and discoveries. And those are just like random bits of information that you find elsewhere around the world that will give you some understanding of what's going on, an extra little, an item that you might be able to find, a code. There's also, how Dishonored 2 had the Jindosh lock. There's a couple of things in the game that are like, they don't really reference it that much. It's just like a ridiculous puzzle that you need to figure out that is going to take you a little while to figure out. And it's like one of them is predicated on you just having a lot of knowledge about the world and the lore, and it's like a quiz, and you get that kind of like the item from that by just going around and figuring things out and listening to characters and reading. And so in the way that it is handholdy to keep you on track to get the main quest done. But if you want to go out there and figure out different things and find new ways to play, or even learn more about the things that are hidden away in the corners of the game, it doesn't hold your hand in that. It will push you in the right direction, and then it's up to you to figure it out.
Yeah, and to shout that out further, even like there are things that there are rooms that I came across while playing Deathloop that I still have no idea what the fuck was going on. Like there's a room, and I'm sure you guys will get this one. There's like a building near actually I guess I shouldn't say that because I might be giving away too much. But like there's one building where I went into a room and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? There's like weird sex stuff going on, essentially, right? That you kind of have to solve and figure out. And I kept going back to that room because that room was near a spot that I would find myself
I'm sure you did keep going back to that room, Bless.
I had questions, but no,
Play
like
a
it was
different game than everybody else.
that room was on the path to a place I kept going back to in my gameplay. So I'd always stop in there and look around and be like, what am I missing here? And it's fascinating stuff like that. I think harkens back to a lot of Arkane's great level design. You know, when we talk about Arkane games, especially something like Dishonored 2, we often talk about the Clockwork Mansion and we talk about the Crack in the Slab level. And I would say there's nothing on the level of Clockwork Mansion individually or even Crack in the Slab, but overall, the Arkane level design still shines, right? You get 4 districts, and the 4 districts change in small ways throughout the day, right? And so like when you leave in the morning, come back at noon, or when you leave at noon and come back in the afternoon or come back at night, there are certain things that change, certain visionaries that change which district they're in or just leave altogether, right? That you're going back to districts with different goals, different like things to do, and you're coming into them from different angles. And so you might go into a district and you're experiencing a different side of that district than you experienced when you went in there before, because the way that they're expanded and the way that they're designed, you might be like crossing over certain paths that you went through previous times, but you kind of always end up in different destinations because the way that they spread out leads and visionaries and stuff over the districts is done in a way that it really takes advantage of how big these levels are and how kind of like, I guess, unique and well constructed they are to lead you and guide you to different areas of them.
And I think if I can, part of what everything you just said there, right, I think speaks to this conversation we were having about hand-holding and what this is. And honestly, I think not the hand-holding as much, but like what we're talking about with the story. And after I rolled credits and how I reflected back and I was like, oh man, did I like this less than I liked it when I was so hot on it 5 hours in? To roll the credits here, and I was like, this ending felt abrupt. And it's not that I didn't like it. It was interesting. And then when Blessing and I talked about it, it turned out we did different things. And he was like, mine was abrupt too. I was like, interesting. The hand-holding, what we're talking about, I think, is in the same idea of that, where the story of what's actually going on in this loop and, why Colt and Juliana are going head to head and trying to get out of this or not get out of it. That's there, but I don't think it's the point. And it's the same way of like when I go into one of these areas and like literally it's like I need to kill the visionary here. The visionary then has a red diamond on them most of the time. There's a couple that are hidden, right? But a red diamond that points all the way across the map with a countdown, for meters as I get there. And that's every objective you put on it. And I could see where that would feel handholdy, but for me, it really is the exploration and your loadout and how you want to do it is the game. Not so much finding the visionary, not so much figuring out, where am I supposed to go next? It is that idea of the more you play it, the more you learn a better way to that visionary. And like there was the party that I think actually was the first gameplay we ever saw for it. But the party scene was so difficult for me in the beginning. And so to have gone through that and learned back entrances and learned what'll happen here and learned if I do that, this will trigger that person and learned about secret passages and how that felt. I had the same information from that first playthrough of the party as I did to the last playthrough of the party, but I was way more empowered and felt in control of it in the last one because of my experiences with it. Does that make sense?
It's classic Dishonored. It's like the objective is clear. Mm-hmm. That's not the pull. It's the how you do that. That is the pull. That's just classic Arkane.
To take that same party example, right? Like I remember my first time going there, and for me it was a strong, probably about 20 minutes of me trying to figure out, all right, I'm in. Wow, there's a lot of people in this party. I engage, I disengage, I re-engage, I disengage, and I keep trying to figure out how do I get through this thing until I eventually took a certain route that worked out way better for me. The second time because I ended up going to this party like probably 4 or 5 times, right? The second time I went, I was like, okay, cool, I know this a little bit better. I'm going to take this route instead, and then I end up getting lost. a bit into that route and getting caught and getting to that pattern again of, okay, cool, now I'm engaging and disengaging again. What is it about this route that's now not working for me, and what have I learned from this second time being here that I'm going to take into the next time? And the more and more, like, you visit a lot of the same areas over and over again, but you visit them with new information that it almost felt like speed running, where I get to the party, and if I was to go and do a similar objective now at that party, I know that I take I hop on these 3 ledges, take this direction. Cool. There's a window over here that is this specific room that I want to get into. Cool. I get into that room. I do the thing. Cool. I go over here and I do this thing. And now, like, that is knowledge for me. And that for me comes back to the I guess the player choice conversation of or not, the hand-holding conversation of, they give you a bunch of shit. Or they hold your hand on a bunch of shit, but I am gaining my own knowledge as a player, as Colt is gaining his own knowledge as the character. And those two knowledges are kind of working together in a way that really makes this game what it is. And I really like it for that.
Yeah, I think too, like, something that I thought was a really strong strength, especially because it just seemed cool. Like, I liked stuff that's, okay, this is aesthetically pleasing and it has like functionality to it. This is like immediately when you start the game, so it's not really like a secret, but there's sort of writing in the air that's like, like a message from, presumably like the loop you did before, even if you just started the game, right?
Like subconscious.
And yes, and it's awesome because it, one, just creates like a certain energy in the world. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is like What Remains of Edith Finch style, like just writing on the ledges. But what's cool is, like, even in areas that are sort of more, enemy focused or combat driven, sometimes there'll be like little messages that are something like, maybe there's another way. And then I'm like, okay, so you're telling me if I go down this way, I'm probably going to get like shot up or something. And little stuff like that really helped also guide, my playthrough. Or it might say something like, oh, try stealth here. And it's because there's an enemy looking out of a window. And it's like, I was going to do stealth anyway. But it was just kind of nice to have that extra stuff. And, having just beat Demon Souls, like, I saw like that element in there because, like, that's a game that also is very like game helpy, where there's notes from other players and that can kind of help guide your playthrough. And when I was playing Demon Souls, like, I often would read it and say, okay, this is going to help inform what I'm going after now or how I'm going to go about a certain thing. And then, of course, the Juliana infiltration, which could be AI or could be a person, is also, in Demon Souls and something that you can experience and something you can do as a player as well. So I liked those elements of it. And I think, again, with the whole like hand-holding conversation, it's more for me like clarity and an ease in case you're interested in doing, for lack of a better term, the bare minimum. Like, I'm enjoying my playthrough a lot and I'm having fun with it and I'm thinking through all those things and strategizing, but like, I'm just following what you gave me. And, and that's why sometimes I do get stuck when it's like, okay, and now find the thing. And I'm like, oh, what am I looking for? And I gotta look in my menu and I'm like, okay, I'm looking for this thing here. Cause like occasionally there aren't markers for a certain thing, or like at one point you get like a photograph of an area and they're like, oh, check this general area. But I'm like, damn, ain't no marker here? All right, well, let's just walk around and figure out where we're going. But I like that element of it. And I mean, I think what helps maintain the fun and the freshness is your options when you go in to do those objectives, but also, again, the order of objectives. Like, when I first started playing, I was kind of following one sort of line of objectives, and it kept bringing you to like similar places. And I'm like, okay, I could see someone like being annoyed by this, but one, you can pick a different time of day. And then two, if I really don't want to come back here, I could just do something that isn't here. Yeah. And then that'll be a way to sort of break away from it and do something different. So I really like that element of it. And I'm so curious as to how long this game's going to take me to finish, but I'm having a really good time with it.
I like hearing you talk about like tackling it line by line. Cause for me, it was always, all right, what's next up for me in this day, right? Like, I do whatever's available to me in the morning in terms of what's on my chart. And then I get to noon and I'm like, cool, what's there to do in noon? And I do that instead. And so I was often mixing and matching my leads / objectives in ways where I was playing the game very non-linearly. And I think it's interesting, especially when we get into the story conversation and narrative conversation, because for me, I don't know if that supported or hampered the way that I took in the story, because oftentimes, like, you have eight different visionaries, right, that you're trying to go after, and all of them kind of have their own stories that are smaller stories in the world, but all stories that are the story of the island you're on, and they all kind of intersect in interesting ways. But to keep track of them, I would imagine that it'd be way easier to keep track if I was to do it line by line as opposed to doing it in the order that
like
I just see them come
fast forwarding the day. I'd go through a day just to keep the storyline. Like I wasted so many days because it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter.
You probably retained it way better than I have, because for me, one of my not even a complaint, but I guess one of the things that I don't love as much as the pure gameplay is like the narrative. Like in the game, I would say there's kind of multiple stories interweaving in terms of you as Colt and like what's going on. You're back and forth in Juliana and you trying to escape the island, but then the story of the island, right? Like there's, all these visionaries, there's all these like things you can pick up. There's computer terminals you can read into, there's notes you're going to find. And, you mentioned it earlier of, the game does a good job of, if you find a note and you click out of the note, there's a small pop-up that'll give you the quick 1-sentence summary of that note or what you discovered based off of that note. And I found myself early on enjoying a lot of the notes and a lot of the terminal stuff, because you would get in there and that is how you're getting a lot of the narrative. The game isn't the game will give you those pop-ups, but there's not really cutscenes. There's not really anything to really guide you through the story in a very in-your-face way. You're kind of it's I guess it's similar to almost like a Portal, but not even that, in the way that you're getting the story as you're going, right? And you're not having somebody constantly in your ear, except for Juliana, who's speaking to you in any sort of explicit way and feeding you
out of the dual sense.
Just out of the dual sense.
Oh, I turn that shit off on me, dude.
It's so loud. No, I like it, but it is very loud. And then there's a lot of swearing. Like I'm just in my apartment and it's like, shut the fuck up. And I'm like, damn, this is intense.
Yeah, it's funny because I played it using my pulse, and so I had no idea that was a thing until just today when I sat down to this podcast and I clicked into it because I wanted to check a thing out, and she started speaking through my controller, and I was like,
what's up, motherfucker? It's like, all right, damn. Good morning to you too. But I would say there are cutscenes. I mean, I would count those cartoon kind of
cartoons are great, yeah.
True.
Stylizations as cutscenes, and again, that's very much where it's like, okay, in case somehow you were just zoning all this out, like this is what happened at the for this. Now that we know all this, here's what we see.
I guess
so I like those
true.
elements of it.
That's true, but I would say that those are more so so what the next thing you're doing is, like keeping up in any sort of way.
Colt does a great job of narrating, to himself, which is us, but what is happening and what that means for the story. Exactly. All right, I figured out that if I do this thing, then he'll have to go here. So that's great. And you get the little thing, and I'll get him to the party kind of thing. You're like, that's great.
I would still say that the story, it kind of is what you want to get out of it in terms of, if you want to read the terminals and read the notes and all that stuff, I think that's when you're going to get the most out of it. And I think it's more so in this game than in similar games that do have readable notes and and other things like that, right? Like in this game, if you're not reading the notes, you're probably going to miss out on quite a bit, and it's still going to be understandable. It's still going to be playable, and you're still going to have those animated bits that'll keep you somewhat informed, but I felt way more obligated to actually read that shit more so than in other games.
Tim, what is your take? 10 out of 10 here. What was your take on the story? Was that something
on the story? It was something that I really enjoyed the way it was told. I did it in a very non-linear fashion as well, but as someone who is a big fan of the Souls games where, they tell broken stories in small chunks and then allow you to piece it together, that was very much up my alley. I think that the core story that is being told is the story of Colt and Juliana and their kind of relationship, and the game kind of knows that's the core story, and it does a lot with not playing its hand immediately. It knows that it needs to take this relationship and extend it and layer it over a 12, 13, 14-hour experience and make sure that you're always hooked into that back and forth up until the very end of the game. And I think it does an incredibly good job at it. And it does that not by telling you, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then this happened. It simply tells you a story through their interpersonal relationships and the way there are ups and downs. You get Juliana, I describe in my review as this agent of chaos. Like that's how she behaves. Like you'll speak to her one day and she'll be like, oh, just up your ass about something. And then Colt will say something and she'll react in a way that catches you so off guard. She's like almost sweet with you for a moment. And that's the story telling you, hey, you should think about what that moment means for Colt and for Juliana and what implication it has on the context of the game as a whole. So that kind of back and forth, you're never quite sure of what her position is, what her motives are. And then you're never quite sure how invested Colt is in her versus his own journey to to kind of break the loop, because you have moments where he's like, oh, maybe I care about this person, or I did used to care about this person. What does that mean? That story for me just kept me going from start to finish. And then underneath it all is, you know, Arkane are incredible at creating, like, you know, this world, that the world that you see, and then the world that existed before it, that the world that you're looking at was built upon. And they do that so well in Dishonored, and they do it so well here. So I was immediately fascinated with what is the situation, how, because these visionaries didn't just stumble upon the ability to, you know, harness time for their own powers, and digging into that in the morsel of informations that are scattered around the rest of the world was kind of like the cherry on top for the gameplay. Like every now and then I'd stumble upon it and I'll be like, oh, that is a reference to the thing that I read maybe an hour ago over there, and it colors in the picture a little more for me. So I feel like it's got like two parallel tracks where it's like the Colt and Juliana story, and then the island story and the visionary stories as well, because they all have stories, interpersonal relationships. They hate each other, some love each other, they've been through shit together. And those, I feel like it had a multi-tiered, textured story. You're right in saying I don't think it's the core of the game. It's not amazing, but I feel like it's a really nice complement to the gameplay experience.
And that's the thing I would say,
It's
is
the
it's a
baked potato.
compliment. Yeah, it is the baked potato. Yes.
And sometimes that can
See,
be a
you
meal.
thought we did
Sometimes
this whole-
that can be a meal.
You thought we did this whole thing in the front for no reason, listener, but there it is. We got there in the end. But yeah, that was it. When the credits rolled and I was like, oh, okay, it's over. I was in a weird spot of like, I didn't think much about it, which I think is rare. Where, you know what I mean? I feel like we finish video games and then I want to talk about them. I want to do it. I want to talk about Deathloop, but I want to talk about what you were using and what you did and how you did. You know about this secret path? And when Bless was like, oh yeah, did you understand the ending? I was like, oh yeah, well, when I did what? And Bless was like, you did that? I did this. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But yours was abrupt as well, right, Bless?
Yeah. Like by the time I finished the ending of the game, I kind of wanted to replay it to like just re-experience it again, because I think the game goes interesting places in terms of what they're doing with the characters and what they're doing with the world. And, you know, like it's a story that I think you guys put it well, right? Comparing it to the loaded baked potato. It very much feels like a compliment to the actual gameplay itself, which is why I'm overall fine with it, and why I overall still adore this game, even though like it's not my story of the year or anything like that. But, you know, like it's a fun one. I think Tim compares it a lot to, he compares the writing a lot and the quips a lot to a Marvel movie. And I think that's an interesting way to put it, where it has this light, quick energy to it, especially the dialogue between Colt and Juliana, where, you know, you have your back and forths and there's always some sort of quip or some sort of punchline associated with it. And you're on to the next one, right? You're in the game and you're back to focusing on stealthing around and doing whatever. And I think with that, you know, there's a fun energy that the dialogue adds to the game overall. And I think also it adds to what the energy of the world is, because Deathloop, you know, as a Deathloop stylistically, I think is really cool and really awesome, and really, like, you know, when you look at the island, when you look at the character design, when you look at the masks that the enemies are wearing, when you look at like the architecture, that game, the game visually, and even you know, in terms of like sound and the overall, I guess, audio visual style of it, is so cool and so unique that, you know, I think that is as important to the story in terms of building what this world is and actually making it a world that you want to get lost in.
Yeah, like without spoiling the game, I agree with you in the abruptness, but I really like the abruptness. And there's going to be like, maybe it's me like reading too much into it, but from a pacing perspective, I really like how they used a very abrupt final sequence to cap off the kind of journey that you've had, because you spend a lot of the game kind of stumbling forward through a lot of it. Like you make a little bit of progress and then you rewind. You make a little more progress and you rewind. It's like one step forward, two step back. And that's how it feels for a great deal of it. Up until that final sequence where all the pieces are in place and then you know exactly what you need to do to get it done. And by that point, the game's trained you to not only know meticulously every part of that world, but your character is basically unstoppable and capable of achieving this easily because you've built them that way. So the final run is this amazing, breathless, smooth like journey through the entire game.
It's like a victory lap.
Yeah, it's a victory lap.
Yeah,
like
that's
you,
a good way
like
of putting
it's the sail. It's like the wind to your sales. You're unstoppable. And the feeling of going through it, knowing all that you've been through to get there, it's like intoxicating. And then just as you get to the end, it hits you with like now you've got to make a decision. And the question it asks you is, was that worth it? And the abruptness of that is like you're making a decision in a moment to be like, oh, I need to behave, in this certain thing, or I need to do X, Y, and Z thing in this moment. But at the same time, it forces you to reflect on everything you've done to get there. And the way when you're done with it all, the question it leaves you is like, was it worth it? Like, did doing all that make the final moments of what you had to do worth it? And that's why the abruptness really worked for me.
Yeah, I love that lens. I love what you're talking about there. I'm with Bless where we were talking about it.
Yeah.
My thing is, I mean, I gotta go back and beat it again. I want to go back and do it again because I think I was to an extent even like playing it expecting and one more thing. Like I was, I thought the final like checkbox there was going to be a bit longer. It was going to be a mission unto itself kind of thing. When in reality, it's very similar to how I'm complimenting them on their bosses, the visionaries, just being normal people, right? Like it was just another box. It was just another thing that I finished on the story, and then bam, all right, credits. And I was like, oh shit, okay. Well, I was expecting to get, the video game thing. Like, oh, well, I gotta hunker down, get ready to see what's gonna happen here. Instead, I was like, oh, okay. But I don't think
I want to finish it, and I'm like, I'm 11 hours in, and I feel like I'm only like halfway done, and I'm like, I'm gonna live in this. I'm not gonna get off this island. Like it's just taking.
You're in the loop now. You're
really
in the
long
loop now.
time. Yes, exactly.
Jake H wrote in, and I know we talked a little bit about it, but I do want to go around. He said, if I remember correctly, you, Greg, had said before you bounce off the Dishonored games. If you do like Deathloop, what makes it appeal to you more than Dishonored? And Jake's right. Like I had started both of the different Dishonored, and I totally recognize why they're beloved and everything, but like the world didn't grab me was always my thing. The world and the vibe of it wasn't a place I wanted to spend 15 hours in, if not more. And I think it's something we go back to what Bless and Tam have been talking about in terms of, Deathloop being a living, breathing city with all these stories there and all these interesting people, but then also the layout being so cool and the districts being so cool and each one of the visionaries being somebody I want to know more about. Like it's something about it being a modern setting that does more for me than I think Dishonored did. And the color of it does more for me and the sci-fi-ness of the weapons and the thing. But then I think there is such a big part of it being carried by Colt and Juliana, but Colt too. Because even when Colt's just talking to himself, he's funny. And he's interesting. And there's so much dialogue when you start a new day or just a new area between Colt and Juliana that is interesting and does keep me on my toes as I play through it of like, oh, what else am I going to get here? What other tidbit am I going to get?
Yeah, I remember listening to you in an interview with folks from Arkane talking about why they went this direction with Deathloop as compared to Dishonored. And, their answer was boiled down pretty much, hey, this is an aesthetic that's going to work for way more people. Right? This is an easier thing to get into. And then
was it whale punk? That was what it was before.
Whale punk.
Whale punk is how you describe Dishonored. Yeah, and I know for me, as somebody who played Dishonored 1 and 2, I loved Dishonored 1 and 2, but the whale punk aesthetic wasn't the reason why I love those games. I know probably for many people it is, and like I think there are cool things about that, right? Like what they do with talking about the outsider and all the fantastical elements of Dishonored, I'd say, are interesting, but something like Deathloop, I think speaks more for me and more for, I guess, a different part of the audience that Dishonored wasn't able to grab. Deathloop is going to be able to grab those people, and so I'd say I like that. But then also to answer the question in terms of comparing Deathloop to Dishonored and what one game might do better than the other, the thing I like about Deathloop that for me puts it above Dishonored is the kinetic nature of it when you're going into combat. I remember last year when we were reviewing The Last of Us Part 2, a thing that we talked about was the combat in that game and comparing it to something like Hotline Miami. And I get a similar sort of feel in Deathloop where I feel like, given whatever my loadout is, I can have a reaction, right? Because I got my 1 or 2 slabs and I got my assortment of weapons and I have my hack-a-majig, which we've not really even talked about, right? Like you have
there's so much we haven't talked about this game. There's a lot going on in this game.
Yeah, you have a hacking item that you can use to hack things in the environment, and so oftentimes you would see a camera and you can hack the camera to not detect you, or you can hack a turret to go after enemies as opposed to you. And going into an area and being able to have the option of, cool, I see a guy in front of me, I'm going to take that guy out, I'm going to nexus these people together, I'm going to shoot these guys so I can take out 3 people at the same time. Over there is a turret, I'm going to activate that turret just in case somebody's going to sneak up on me from that direction, and I'm going to turn, I'm going to sneak stealth, take out this person. There's something nice, I love that process. There's something so fun about it, and it turns combat into less of an actiony combat sequence and more so into what feels like a free puzzle to solve, right? Like there aren't enemy classes really. Like there's not this game like a lot of enemies you can take out in one hit, right? If you stealth them or if you hit them in the head, like it is very easy to take out enemies and it doesn't feel combat-y, right? It's not a Gears of War, it's not a first-person shooter, even though technically it is a first-person shooter. But it feels way more about you taking your time and being more methodical and, you know, solving a puzzle the way that you want to solve a puzzle, which I think adds so much to this game. Even though Dishonored has that, I'd say this game furthers that way more, especially in its setup and giving the freedom to go aggressive if you want to.
I think that's fun about it too, is you can pick up, like, there are certain instances where you can like pick up turret like briefcases and set them up in places, which of course, again, I'm looking for an efficient fight, not a stylish fight, not a let me flex my, I can go boom boom pow. No, I want to do this in the dumbest, most time-consuming way possible. So especially early on when you're like still getting to know like the world and like barely building your powers, like, because you don't start out with all this like thinking of Residium or doing all this at once. Like it's kind of slowly piecemeal to you over like that first hour or maybe 2 hours. So when I didn't really have much of anything, I'm like, okay, well, I can set up these turrets. And what if instead of fighting all these enemies in this area, I just get them to see me enough to walk down this hallway where I have a turret and I just slowly line up. And I spent like half an hour just like slowly placing turrets and getting people to come in and like running away. And like, again, I love that it offers that because there is so much like health around. Like there are some upgrades where you can get, you know, health regen or get like expanded health. And normally I always go for that kind of thing in any game I play because like I'm constantly wounded and I like want to easily get my health back. I did the same thing in Demon Souls. I'm like, it's the regenerating like all day, every day. And the other one that keeps your body or whatever. I'm like, because that way, if I get in trouble, I can just hide and then get my health back. But here there's health everywhere. Like the only time I died was if Juliana killed me, which didn't happen too many times yet, 11 hours in, or if I got really caught up and I just couldn't get out of a situation, and then maybe I'd die then. But a lot of times if I was low on health, I'm like, let me just run back to that other room where there's like 8 health bottles or something.
Health plentiful, right? Because it's not a shooter in that way. Exactly.
It's you can come here and have fun in the way that you want to have fun. So if you want to be a cheese coward like me, you can do that. If you want to go and like, you know, chain things together, you can do that. If you want to do stealth, you can do that. And it's always fun to do that. And like the enemies are, I love the art direction of this game. The enemies are like so stylish looking with their like, there's one, and this is like on the media kit on the Deathloop site, where she has like this green like polka dotted dress, but they're also like really demented and murderous. So there's just something so fun and almost like Bioshocky about that. Even like there are these vending machines where you can get ammo from and like stuff like that. Like I live for that. And I love like all the little details they have in this game. Stuff like there's a candy dispenser where if you kick it, and they showed this in the trailer that was last show, a bunch of the candies fall out and like people can slip on them. Like I didn't even know people could slip on them until
that's awesome.
I saw it in the trailer. Like, and a bunch of like cool stuff like that. Or one of the first things I did in the game, you wake up on the beach, you grab your gun, and I turned and there was a bunch of bottles and I shot one of them, and then text popped up in the like kind of over neon glowy font that said nice. And I was like, damn, y'all thought of that? I was like, okay. And that was like one of my questions coming into this game.
Watching the trailer from the PlayStation Showcase the other day, right? Like we joke around how many trailers there are about this and how much fucking we've seen Deathloop, right? But watching that thing, I was like, holy shit, I didn't know I could do that. Like I'm seeing like slabs upgraded all the way, and I'm like, fuck, I could put. I think
there was a thing with fireworks in that trailer, and I was like, oh, you can do that. I never tried that, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
Like I know the one thing I'll say about this game too is that it's pretty lenient in terms of difficulty, and I'm not grappled with how I feel about it because one, there's health stuff all over, right? If you want to heal, you can heal. And I kind of like that because it sucks to be stuck in a game where you're trying to be stealthy and you're just one hit the whole time. But like, enemies are super easy to take out. I didn't die that much. Even Juliana, I'd say Juliana took me out maybe twice. And most of the times I saw her, I would take her out. Granted, that was always an NPC because during the review period, for the most part. Like we didn't have online available until recently, so I've not tried it with the online yet to see how a player would fare in that situation. But you know, there's also not really a difficulty ramp up in this game. Like you're going back to the same areas and encountering the same enemies. If anything, you get more powerful as you go. And so like I think that kind of factored into the stealth to action pipeline that I went through, where by the time I got to the end of the game, I was like, you know what, fuck it, man. Like let's go out, let's equip a shotgun, let's fucking take fools out as many as I can at the same time. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Like I don't think it like takes that much away from it, but you know, there were times where I was like, man, I wish this was a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, like you get there because I mean, you started off and it was a challenge, right? Like it was trickier. When you start off stealthing, it's hard to do because you don't have stuff like shift. You don't have a lot of like abilities that allow you to keep an eye on where enemies are. And it stops being a challenge when your cult becomes proficient. And depending on how you approach it, the visionaries are never a pushover. There's always some element of like difficulty. There's not difficulty, but like if you don't get some element of it right, you can screw the whole thing up and it could escalate into something that you generally don't want it to be. That was the point where I was like, okay, it's not a difficult game. It just wants you to be a little more careful in certain environments and certain situations. And for me, I felt like that was a better place to be because ultimately the game's goal is to bestow knowledge upon you and help you have these understandings come to you. And if you're constantly getting killed, I feel like that's an easy way to push people away and make you bounce away when it's a case of you didn't shoot good and that's why you died.
That I think that's it. It's the game's expectation and what it is. And I think you know even we were talking a second ago about it's a shooter but it's not kind of thing. I feel like for what it looks like a duck but it doesn't quack like a duck, and so like you have to look at it and realize it's not a duck. And that was another thing I was with you where I was, man, like shit, I haven't died at all. You know what I mean? I'm doing really well at this.
No
and
gamer
it was
hours over here.
Yeah, it was like, is this a detriment to it? But then it was the idea of like, I didn't want it to be Returnal. I don't want it to be that I drop all that stuff. You do want that next powerful. And it is this thing of them being the levels being puzzle boxes to themselves, right? Of like, how do I want to do it? And then what do I do? And then what did I learn? And how do I apply that to the next time I come through and do it? Deathloop's something incredibly special.
To the point of the difficulty, I'm right there with y'all where it's like it's not really difficult. Like there were a few moments where I was personally challenged, but then even then, like since you're always learning about the design, you can kind of maybe avoid some of the things that tripped you up last time. There's an area that lives vividly in my mind that I was playing last night, where there's a lot of. I'm not a fan of the proximity mines in this game because sometimes you hear them beep. You do hear them beep, and it was one of those things where I'm like, is this too much or am I like maybe too dumb? So let me know. Ain't no feelings gonna get hurt, y'all.
Like, it didn't ruin it for me, but there is an area where the proximity mines are at the beginning, like near the beginning of that area, and so you have to cross them every time, and
some of them are right in the path where it's like, okay, let's just not get crazy. Let's like, we got. But then like also I'm like, y'all ain't really giving me that many bottles to throw, but that's fine. I can shoot. But then they hear my gun. It's fine. I have a quiet gun, and then
but I mean,
it was.
I was gonna say you're having the moment I had where it was that.
Can you disarm them? The proximity ones.
Hours later, after throwing things and sliding under them, I was crouched up next to when it was like disarm. I'm like, motherfucker.
What?
Are you sure? Because I walked up to one and they
I did the same
That's
exact
crazy.
sequence last night, Janet. Yes,
yeah. You just.
That's really funny.
If you crouch and walk towards them very slowly, you get within a range, and it will it beeps quicker to tell you're getting into dangerous territory. Yeah. But then you just hold the button down and it'll disarm them.
That's
right, I'm gonna
really
do it.
Funny. I
if
never
discovered that. I'm sending y'all all the video of me blowing up doing this. And someone doing
if you blow up, you did it wrong. Yeah.
And you lose so much health from blowing up too. I also don't like that I die instantly in the freezing water. I do get it from a traversal standpoint, but if you're at like one time I was at the end of like my lives, like early in the game where like you don't have any abilities because you get those like 2 kind of buffer lives. And I just straight up just fell. That's it. Just miscalculated. And they're like, now, you died. I was like, I wish this was a little, I don't know. I'm just like, damn, but that's like this is like a very small nitpicky situation that was very early on. But like that was a little bit not my favorite. And I was thinking about that when like we were reflecting on our PS I Love You preview where y'all were like, oh, sometimes the traversal is like, nah, maybe there's something to be desired. The double jump ability helps a lot though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You can get an ability that allows you to turn the proximity mines on the enemies as well. So keep an eye out for that. So it won't hurt you.
Yeah, those fucking mines, man.
I lost
Fair.
my train. I lost
Yeah,
my train.
I had a silence pistol that got me through the mines. So it was never that big of a problem because like for me, disarming the mines was just like shooting them one by one in the way that Janet was describing. And the sucky thing would be alerting enemies to the exploding mines. But that was another thing I was gonna bring up in terms of the game being lenient is the enemies forget about you really quickly in a way that made it fun for me, but also had me in the back of my mind being like, maybe they should, I don't know, these enemies seem real dumb. Like they seem real stupid in the way that, we're playing through the Metal Gear Solid series right now, with Tam Barrett and Stoic Mike. And, we're talking about how good the enemies are at like clearing out and, like they're not dumb enemies.
These are dumb enemies.
But
Deathloop has some dumb enemies.
Like if you're gonna get into like the almost like the lore and universe of it, you're comparing like a privatized army to a bunch of people who are like partying and know that there's no consequences to anything.
Yeah, is it because they're drunk?
Yeah, like they're just like they don't give a shit. Like if they die, they die. Like they're gonna wake up the next day.
Yeah, but you don't forget that somebody exists after 2 seconds of not seeing them.
Yeah, a lot of them are also scared. Because you can hear them, they're like, "Oh shit! I hope that's not Colt."
Yeah,
like they don't want to engage you, and also a lot of them are like, it's going to be over within a day, so who really cares? They don't make an effort to chase you down. They're just busy doing their own thing.
And
they are just normal
cop out answer. The enemies are dumb as hell, but it's fun.
Yeah, they are dumb.
They are dumb.
They are dumb.
That's the thing is, it's not a big complaint. It's just like one of those things where I'm like, man, they are like I'm able to slip back into stealth real easily.
I'll say they're only
what you want, but.
They're only dumb to a degree though, because I was thinking about how I'm like, how dumb are these people? Let's see. And I was in an area where there was sort of like I guess like a metal flooring where conveniently there's spots underneath the flooring, and everyone knew I was there, and I'm like, okay, cool. One thing I like about this game too in terms of difficulty is it is possible to take out all the enemies in an area and then just walk around and chill, and then now it's a walking sim. So there we go. So I did that a lot because I'm like I didn't really. Even though I did stealth, I usually did try to kill everyone for the most part. Sometimes I didn't care if I was just trying to get to a certain area, but a lot of times I'm like, honestly, it's just easier if I take all y'all out. Like I ain't trying to worry about this. Like I'm just gonna kill everybody. So that's probably why it's taking so long.
By the end of my run, I had like enough good trinkets that I could like sprint past people and they would not know I was there. So that was my favorite part of it. I'm just like, yeah, I can just run around anywhere where I want and no one really knows I'm around as long as I'm not like right in front of them.
Yeah, but I will say, like, I was hiding and I was like in a spot where I'm like, great, everyone's gonna come here, and then boom, I'm gonna shoot them, and then I'm just gonna keep shooting them like fish in a barrel. And I'm like, I'm good. And I even said a lot, I'm like, I'm good until someone realizes they can throw a grenade at me. But if they don't figure that out, and eventually they did. So I will say they're dumb, but like there's a slight limit there.
They're
like they
dumb,
are smart
but
enough to throw the grenade.
Like they're dangerously dumb.
Yes, exactly. So you can't get away with everything, but you can get away with more than you can in maybe a more traditional like stealth environment.
I was gonna go back to the difficulty thing and just talking about like not feeling that like challenge of like fighting enemies and stuff like that. And that's just something like I feel like Dishonored, like they had some different enemy types, especially in like 2 and stuff. There were definitely some enemies that you did not want to mess with in certain aspects of that game. But like for me, the appeal was always like the gameplay itself was never difficult, and like fighting itself was never difficult. It's difficult to get the perfect run that you want to get, and that's like always, and that's something going back to the question, what makes it appeal more to you than Dishonored? I personally don't. I'm only 6 hours in. I don't know if I like this more than Dishonored 2. Like I fucking adore Dishonored 2, and so I have to, get through the end of it to see how I feel about it. But the difficulty is making that perfect run and doing everything that you want to do it exactly how you want to do it. Of like, I've been going to this like this themed area where it's like this role playing situation, and I've gone to it. I think that area and like getting to that visionary to get that slab the most out of anything else I've done so far in the game. And every time it's like I have a new perk, and like, all right, how does that help me? Get to, the top floor without being noticed, like, whatsoever, and doing things like that. And one of the things that I think personally makes me like Deathloop a little more than Dishonored 2 is that, like, Dishonored 2 is a little more linear, very linear in how it delivers the game. I think at the end of each level, you can, like, choose to replay the level or not if like you mess something up, or like if you like wanted to go like full stealth, not killing anybody. But then in that replayability, you're not really gaining anything other than just like doing your
I just played this level for an hour. Why would I replay this?
Exactly. And that's why just like the way that Deathloop is set up, you have those opportunities to do those perfect runs again while also accomplishing something else that'll help you for further on in the game. And that was like something that dawned on me last night while playing, and I was like, holy shit, that's like another level that I wonder if like they specifically thought about with like how they know that people enjoy the Dishonored games, and then like how they could even further that for people who, like Tam was saying, and like I've watched Dishonored 2 speedrunners who do some incredible, ridiculous work with like powers, without powers. It's wild, and I'm fascinated to see like how those people are going to tackle it, which is ingenious.
To that point, like some of the level design in a fun way reminds me of something like Mario 64, where I'll go and watch speedruns of Mario 64 and see like in the rainbow like magic carpet level, I forget what that one's called,
Big fan.
like in that level in that game, right? Like you can turn around, you can do the long jump and land on another platform, right? Like in Mario 64 has a lot of stuff like that where you can make a certain jump and get to a certain level of a certain area of a level, basically because the game is designed kind of in like this diorama form where you don't have to do things step by step. In fact, like if you want, you can get in the cannon and shoot to the top of Bob-omb Battlefield and call it a day, right? Like you're given that option, and Deathloop has a similar thing where you start off and it is, your runs are pretty rough through these levels. You're taking them very, very stealthily. You're going slowly. You don't know the shortcuts, but there's two visionaries I have in my mind specifically where they always had the slabs that I wanted, so I'd go after them over and over again. And by the time I like the first for one of them, right, like I would go through, and he has this visionary has a fortress basically that I'm working my way up through towards, and I'm taking out so many enemies that are in this fortress, and I get to the top and I finally take him out right after like going through all these things. I did that about 3 times before I had the thought of, what if I just went through the outside? Like what happens if I just like shift here and then shift here? And sure enough, I bypassed what usually would take me like 8 minutes of combat. I bypassed that in like 2 minutes of shifting around.
That's the ingenious of it. Like I feel like it was the last time I brought up it was probably when we did the Deathloop preview for PS I Love You, and I'd brought up Dishonored 2, and someone in the comments was like, "Oh, Barrett, I'm gonna put your feet to the fire. You always say Dishonored 2 is great with the level design, but you never like really explain it." And for people who have actually played Dishonored 2, I don't need to explain it. But for the thing that's like ingenious about Arkane games is that like they have kind of this rule set that they give to you at pretty much the beginning of the game, and then they also almost have like an in and out secret menu of rules that you can discover throughout the game to break the rules that they laid out for you at the beginning of the game. And that's just like they implement that in like kind of level design, in moment to moment gameplay moments, and it's just all about like learning to break the rules that you were given at the very beginning. And that's why I think Arkane is really great at what they do with this, and it sucks to hear that there isn't anything on the high as Clockwork Mansion and Cracking the Slab from Dishonored 2. But I think so far from what I've experienced, like even those 2 levels, like those 2 levels are great, but even just like the other levels that are just like going through the towns and stuff were also really incredible at doing that and delivering on that. And everything that I've experienced in Deathloop also hits that same level for me, which is fucking awesome.
Blessing, that visionary, if it's the one that you're thinking of, you can go straight through the window if you're quick enough.
That's like before, like you can go straight through the window before like they like do the thing.
You can go through the window and kill that visionary before it's even thought of. Before
I got a new goal.
I'm
gonna do that.
It doesn't even know you're there. You just go straight into a kill and then you're out. It takes
because once I realized that I could just like shoot up there way faster than what I usually was doing, it was a revelation. I was like, oh shit, this game is genius. This game is so good. Like what it allows you to do with enough knowledge. But like Barry, you mentioned right, like not having anything on the level of like Crack and Slab and like some of Dishonored 2's best levels. That is one of the reasons why I can't wait for Deathloop 2 if they put out a Deathloop 2, because like this game sets up so much, and this game does so much in terms of establishing a structure and establishing this is what this game format is, and it's original, and it works for us, and this is like the most arcane game we can make. I play this game and I want to play armchair game designer so much of like, what if it was like Metal Gear Solid 5, where if you're getting headshots in the morning, then by afternoon they're wearing helmets, right? Like, what if one of these districts was like a sandstorm? What if like one of these districts had like a weather condition that affected it in this way? Like, that is the type of stuff that they can start building for Deathloop 2 if they wanted to do that. And that game, right? Like, if Deathloop 1 is a 10 out of 10, like Deathloop 2, if they start building on it in those ways, it's gonna be a fucking 11 out of 10.
I can't wait for Deathloop.
Deathloop.
Oh, boo, Barrett. All right. Final thoughts. Anybody got some? Tam, you gave it a 10 out of 10. What's your final thought on Deathloop?
Yeah, I think it's easily my game of the year. I think that it is one of those games that will be looked at in terms of, hey, we're going to tear this game apart and show you how to make a game that's really, really fascinating and really rewarding. It's a game where you can fail repeatedly and come away feeling like you've achieved something. And that is one of the rarest treats that games can give us. The other thing that I think that is incredible that it achieves is something I mentioned in my review, is it's basically teaching you how to build one of the most elusive things in video game design that everyone wants, and that's a flow state. It's teaching you how to create a flow state, get in it, and then leave it at will. And to do that and to do it successfully, it's basically like striking gold. And the fact that they've done it is commendable and is to be lauded. Like, I think it's a fascinating game.
Janet, what do you think so far?
Yeah, man, I really didn't want anything to kill Chicory this year, but it might be Deathloop. I'll get back to y'all when I actually roll credits on it, but it's absolutely intoxicating. Go play this game when it's out. I'll say one of the highest compliments I can give it, of course, this is personal to like how I play games, but I'm gaming all the time. I'm streaming all the time. I'm always playing games. And I can find it tiring at times. I only have so much like game stamina. I never grew up playing like 8-hour sessions or anything. This is a game that I started and I lose track of time almost instantly. I have no perception of my phone. I have no perception of the outside world. I am just completely engrossed in it. And the 11 hours I did play over like a very like small chunk of time with when I've had it so far, it just flew away without any issues or any thoughts. Yeah, it's fantastic, and I can't wait to see it through to the end. It's so damn good.
Bless.
Yeah, this game is easily one of the best of the year. It's definitely competing with all the games that are on the top of my game of the year list, and I think it is a must play. It is Arkane. I think it's going to be the game that really makes Arkane shine for so many people, right? Like, we talk about Dishonored and how good the Dishonored series is. I think this is going to be the one that breaks out for them. It becomes like what I guess Spider-Man was for Insomniac, or what Uncharted was for Naughty Dog, right? Like, I think this is kind of that for them in a way that this is really going to speak to the audience, and people are really going to dig it. And yeah, I can't say enough good things. And like, I really want them to make either DLC or like, I just want to play more. I think that's where I'm at. When I say that I played 17 hours of this game, that was all within like maybe 4 days. I beat this game real quick because I was obsessed with it. And usually I have to be playing a really special game in order to sit down and get lost in it in that way. And so like, I can't say enough good things about Deathloop. And yeah, good job, Arkane. You killed it.
Indeed, Arkane, great job. Yeah, I mean, everybody just talked about how great it is. I obviously am going to say nothing different. I think Deathloop's incredibly special. I think especially once you see it for what it is, if that makes sense, of like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to play it. Sure, the enemies are a bit brain dead or whatever, but it's because how do you get through this murder puzzle? How am I going to solve this? And then once I solve it that way, what's a quicker way to solve it? I got this new cool power. How am I going to bring that in there? I got this new trinket. How's that going to affect everything? The way all the systems build on each other, I think, is just out of this world.
One last thing I want to say,
please, Tam,
before we go, because multiplayer is something that we kind of whiz past, but the multiplayer is incredible. And the thing that I want to highlight is it both uses your knowledge of what you've accumulated of the world and how to play to your favor and against you. Because as Juliana, you have the ability to mimic other characters in the world in the same way that you could in Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhood's multiplayer and hide. So one of the things that I find really fascinating about it is at a certain point, you know exactly where every enemy is. And then if you come into that world as Juliana, you could be like, I know that this cult has played this game enough to look at this area, know that there's an enemy there, and just think, oh, that's just an NPC. I've seen that NPC 1 million times. I'm just going to move on. But you could be that NPC on that occasion. And the fact that you can play mind games with other cults or be cult and be like second guessing every NPC that is around you is just so cool. The multiplayer is like so much fun. Make sure you don't
it's terrifying, especially when you like nail down loops for NPCs, and then another one pops up, and you're like, I've never accounted for you before. What is happening?
Yeah.
And then it is that mind game, and it's
I played
really
a lot
incredible.
I played a lot as Juliana last night. Now that we can play online and play other stuff, and it was that thing of jumping in there, and like it's so weird to be playing the levels in reverse now. Of I start in there and it's like, cool, this is an early thing, so I know where the spawns are, I know where he's coming, I know where Colt's coming out, and so I'm like, well, he's got to be coming here, and then I'd go there. I was like, but if he's after the visionary, he's going to be going like it's this running around trying to play offense and defense of like, wait, I want to protect myself, but I got to find him. But if he's doing, it's a very interesting thing. I don't think it's something I'll go back to a lot. Like I probably played, I'd say 5. I invaded like 5 different people's matches last night and enjoyed it fine, but I didn't feel the draw to really go. Are you going to keep going back to it, you think, Tam?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna. It's rare for me to platinum a game, but currently in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna platinum this. The only other platinums I have are Souls games, and so far the first 2 Mass Effect. So I think I'm gonna get the third Mass Effect game, and then probably this. I only platinum games that I'm like, when people look at it, they're like, damn, this guy's a gamer.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, are you a gamer? If so, you're probably going to play Deathloop. Let us know in the comments what you think about it. Of course, keep watching the Gamescast each and every week for our other reviews, our other updates. You can catch PS I Love You, XOXO, where I'm sure Janet will keep us up to date on her Deathloop experience and everything else. And remember, if you want to support the shows, patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where you can write in to be part of the show. You can usually watch us record it live. You could go get the post show we're going to do right now, but you can mainly say, hey, you're doing a good job. But if you got no bucks to toss our way, no big deal. youtube.com/kindafunnygames, roosterteeth.com, podcast services around the globe. Until next time, go to GameSpot.com and read Tam's review. And no, it's been our pleasure to serve you.